and have my stuff going. And I think that helped in a weird way. I think that avoided being, you know, I think I was able to show you what my voice was very quickly because there wasn't, well, I needed that because you needed a Jubilee series, so that's not really my thing, but my thing is this. It was very clear, I think, what I wanted to do and where I was coming from based on that first kind of year of work I did for Marvel, because I said no to twice as much, you know. And we did that thing where once the ball gets rolling, you want to see more from someone, you want to see more from, so you can see guys come in and suddenly they're doing 10 things at once, and they feel like it's everywhere.
And I remember warning you saying, you're going to get gangbanged. The moment, if you do good, we're going to come at you. There's a lot of people who are going to come at you with offers. You're going to, you know, think it over and only write stuff you feel like you can knock out of the park, especially right out the gate. And speaking to what Matt said earlier about what he was doing to pay the bills, I'll be honest and say that I took him more seriously because of that. You know, truth be told, you know, the fact that he had was bringing other professional experience to bear on the craft of writing comics, I thought was relevant to him and made me take him seriously as a result.
And, you know, and I remember when I realized the secret to being a writer was writing. It took me a while to figure that out, because I would sit in my apartment and wonder what things would be like when I was a professional writer. Not actually writing, but just wondering what it would be like. And that was it. And just kind of that, just write every single, once I started to write every day, it was amazing. I became a writer. And then too, there's that old saw about, like, if you want, there's somebody that you like and you want them to like you back, say no. Don't be interested, you know. And that was, I think that was it. I think, sure. No, well, wait a minute. I remember the first time I told Warren no. It wasn't. It was like, but then suddenly I always felt that little, because again, all I was doing was the stuff I wanted to do and the stuff I had a take on and had a voice in and had something to say and something to do. And it might not have all been good, but it was at least authentic.
Do you feel your other professional experience was a benefit to you?
Oh, absolutely. Just in terms of learning deadlines. I mean, advertising is the reality is we have an air date, so it doesn't matter how much. It doesn't matter if, like, you have a pitch meeting, you have to have it done. And I would also know. I learned defeat. A professional, like, sometimes you're just not going to have it, you know. And I learned how to get up off the mat. It's one of my favorite metaphors is a Steve Wacker thing that, like, you know, the comics train leaves the station every 28 days, and you can be on it or not. And it was kind of a lesson in learning professional responsibility and I think presentability. I learned how to sit in a room full of people and express my ideas, regardless of how wackadoo they might be. I could articulate it in such a way that would make, like, Coca-Cola say, yes, we're going to give you $500,000. And so we would go off and make our commercials or whatever. But that's a big thing, and I think that had a big part of, once we started to do editorial retreats, I could sit in a room and articulate story ideas in a way that didn't make me sound like the gibbering loon I actually am.
And I think one of the points there that, just to articulate it, is that despite appearances, you know, you might see a writer and artist name, I think they came in overnight. There is no overnight success in comics, really, even in the indie market. You know, a lot of people point to The Walking Dead, but Robert was doing a lot of Funkatron and Battle Pope and all that.
Robert was the first guy that ever published me.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Funkatron was the first people, yeah, so I mean, it was, you know, but that's yeah, you're absolutely right.
Oh, was that Man?
Yeah, the Mantis
stuff. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, even at Marvel too, you know, you see a lot of guys whose names come up quickly. Like I said, they all of a sudden you see their names on multiple books, but it's been a really slow process for them to get into. I mean, everyone always says, "Oh, Brian." Everybody forgets what Brian was doing at, you know, back in the day, and all the Viper and all the Power stuff, and, you know, things he was doing on the independent side. Ed as well, you know. So
yeah, this is sort of an old Tom Spurgeon joke, is that Ed Brubaker, when he, you know, this trying to imagine Ed as like a 20-year-old kid making his weird autobio indie comics, but really he wanted to write Captain America. Or the deciding as a 20-year-old, like, I have to kill Steve Rogers. Okay, I'll start by doing this autobiographical comic about shoplifting. Like this is the world's dumbest master plan to kill Captain America. First, steal books and write comics about it.
But, you know, breaking into Marvel is, you're not going to break into Marvel unless you have other published work. That's really what it comes down to, and a lot of people don't realize that. I get so many people who are a little bit deluded, thinking, wow, I have this great story idea for you. I'm like, well, what about you worked on? Well, nothing. I just want to work at Marvel, and that should never be your sole goal. You should always want to tell stories, but tell your own stories, and, you know, work to play in Marvel's sandbox. But there's a lot of people who dream that way, but it should never be your sole goal, is what I tell people.
Me next?
Yeah.
As a little boy, I grew up reading comics and drawing, you know, kung fu fighters and, you know, cowboys and dinosaurs and superheroes fighting and all the rest. I never dreamed of working in comics. I read them till I was about a preteen, and I gave them up for a few years and rediscovered them in college. At that point, I re-entered comics reading Alan Moore, and saw the literary possibilities, and a pretentious college student kept reading stuff like that, you know what I mean, Frank Miller and whatnot. So I always had an eye on comics with a particular kind of comic book as a young man. I was a journalist, and the way I got into comics is pretty simple. It was just blind luck. I had written an article which was about the use of the cannabis leaf in popular culture. And in the article, I heavily quoted the DEA agent in charge of marijuana enforcement laws and the editor of High Times magazine, who were like a yin and yang to each other. And both of them, through their quotes, came across as being kind of silly. I submitted my resume on a lark to DC Comics when they were hiring editors. And I received a call from an editor named Lou Staffas who interviewed me. And when I got there, he was holding the article I'd written, saying, "I want to meet you." And he loved me because the guy who edited High Times had stolen his girlfriend. And he was really, really happy that I had made the guy look like the imbecile that of course he was in his eyes. So we spoke about this for about 45 minutes. Now, it's worth mentioning that had my name been Jim Smith, he probably wouldn't have remembered, but I have a very uncommon name. So it just so happened I wrote an unflattering article about a guy who's stolen a girlfriend, and he remembered my name. So after 45 minutes, he offered me the job. If that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be in comics. He offered me the job. I wasn't convinced I wanted it. So I took a couple of days to decide, so they thought I was playing hardball, which I wasn't. I just honestly didn't know I wanted to work in comics. This was a big shift for me. I was going to take a pay cut by at least half of what I was used to making, if not more. In fact, it was more. I, of course, worked for Vertigo for a few years. I had a very good experience there, though not initially.
Sorry, that is the most understated. Oh yeah, I worked for Vertigo for a few years. Wow, that's all you did? That was it?
Well, I saw a little Ash Kangle Last Leading Depends by Matt Fraction. But long and short of it is, I had a few years there where I cultivated my voice as a comic editor, and I think one of the first things I did was I realized that the type of material that Vertigo was doing at the time, though I thoroughly respected the craft, I was completely unqualified to edit. I mean, I have nothing to tell Neil Gaiman. He's a brilliant artist, visionary guy. I have nothing to contribute, and he knows that. Trust me, he's told me. But I did have an idea about books where it usually featured a splash page of somebody with a gun in his mouth. And so I decided to go that route and forge that ground.
How were you qualified for that exactly?
Lots of research. So I did that, and then I was.
You really are a Paul Schrader fan.
Exactly. Yeah, you know that. Yeah. So long and short of it is, I was contemplating the move to book publishing at about the same time that Marvel, which was very vulnerable at the time, approached me and asked if I might be interested in coming to comics and editing Spider-Man of all things. And I said, "You're crazy. I haven't read Spider-Man since I was 12 when I met it." And the next day I got a FedEx box filled with essential Spider-Mans and things like that. Read up, young man. So I started reading, and I thought, you know, I'm going to do this. And when I found out that Joe Quesada, our former editor-in-chief, was about to become editor-in-chief, that was pretty much the reason I came, because I didn't know Joe well, but I did know he was poaching all of my guys from Vertigo, and I hated him. I thought, he's pretty smart. So I figured he's better my friend than my enemy. So that's how I got in. I have a background in journalism. My degree is in sociology and politics. I had 1 year of art school and it sucked. I'm better telling people that they're good than doing it myself. So anyway, long and short of it, that's how I did it.
I have a quick question to ask. Is Joe Quesada a nice guy, or is he like a bit of a dick, like he is in like interviews, like in DVDs when they're trying to plug the Marvel characters?
Oh, he's a real dick, definitely.
No one's held a job longer than Joe and left on their own accord. Every editor before Joe has been fired. Joe was promoted up the ladder, so yeah, clearly Joe has nothing to offer as a human being. No, Joe is the reason Marvel got up off the mat. Joe, from his work in independent comics, and Joe, I think it's everybody knew Joe and liked Joe and trusted Joe, that when Joe went to Marvel,